Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. It's me, Sean here, and this week on Sweatpants BI, we're doing another dashboard redemption. This month's dashboard that I thought could use some redeeming is another sales tool that I saw somebody post on LinkedIn, and I thought that some of the things in this dashboard that could stand to be improved upon involved things like, making better use of all of the real estate on the Power BI report page that you have available, understanding proper color theory, and we're also going to talk about some concepts that might be controversial, like understanding that geographic data doesn't always automatically need to be visualized on a map. Again, that might sound, but it is true. So we're going to go ahead and get into our dashboard redemption. Before I do that, as always, I just want to say, no names are involved. I changed up some of the layout to sort of protect the original report builder. There's nothing at all wrong with the fact that this report has some things that I thought could be done differently or improved upon. So once again, we're not doing this exercise to sort of attack people who are learning Power BI or people who are building some of their first reports, by no means. The reason that I've started recreating some of these dashboards that I've seen floating around on social media is so that we can talk about the things that could be improved and share those with a whole bunch of people that are learning Power BI. Because my suspicion has always been that a lot of the people that are building Power BI reports, they're making a lot of the same very understandable mistakes with regard to data visualization, layout design, color choices, aesthetics, things like that. So not giving any names, changed up the report a little bit to try to protect the original developer. This person is to be applauded for posting their report on social media, of course, but wanted to share some of the things about that report, some of my observations with the people that happen across this channel so that we can all become better Power BI report builders. So just wanted to give that disclaimer as always. Let's go ahead and hop into Power BI and start looking at our dashboard. So for this month's dashboard redemption, I'm using the same toy sales data set that I've used many times on this channel. It's a good data set for practice and for sort of, demonstrating different things in Power BI. It's got some time series elements to it. It's got some geographic data. It's got a bunch of categorical data about products and stuff. So really easy. I can do a lot with this data set. So even though the original report author didn't use the toy sales data set, I'm still just, going to use this. I was able to create enough of the original report's elements using this data set that I think there's still plenty to talk about. So let's talk about everything that could be improved in this specific report. First of all, the first thing that jumps out to me when I'm looking at almost any Power BI report is the use of color. I can tell a lot about someone's comfort with Power BI and data visualization and how long they've been doing this by how they use color. And, right out of the gate, I'll say that I typically recommend that people don't bother with background colors at all. But this is also something that I don't always practice what I preach. So for this demonstration, instead of just telling you not to use color and making this thing gray or white, I'm going to stick with the purple theme, but I'm going to show you how to execute it well, because I still feel like not enough people have a very solid background in color theory and really know how to create an effective color palette. So I'm going to actually keep the purple in my after version, just so we can talk about, how to make a purple theme work, instead of just, always demonizing color and saying to avoid it. But I would say, there are some things in here like we're using purple and we've got this blue. I would say scratch the blue titles entirely. There are blue titles on all of the cards, all of the charts. I don't think that blue is contributing much to this report. And then, of course, there's the random yellow title here that I didn't understand, why the original author had one yellow title when everything else had, a different color title across the board. So, I would say just get rid of the title colors entirely. I also think that there are some distracting choices with the yellow color, being used in the KPI cards, being used as the backgrounds for our slicer values, of course, being used in this title, being used in our data label over here. That yellow is not a terrible color to sort of pair up with this purple. That yellow pops, it gets my attention, but it's used everywhere, which means that it loses a little bit of its impact. So I'm not automatically opposed to using yellow as kind of our accent color. I think that when I make my after version, I'm just gonna make that yellow a little bit warmer, a little bit more orange. And I think it'll be okay. I think it'll work with the purple that I'm going to go with. So, right out of the gate, some distracting color choices that I think we can improve upon. Another thing that really stood out to me about this report, and it was one of the reasons why I chose it for my dashboard redemption, is I was immediately overwhelmed by the size of the slicers here. You can see that there are 4 slicers on this page, and they take up almost, not quite, but almost a quarter of the real estate on the Power BI report page. One thing that I want to be clear about is when you have built a ton of Power BI reports, and as you get more comfortable with making smart formatting choices and understanding how big things to be, you will be amazed at how much you can fit on a Power BI report page just by making clever use of spacing. Do these slicers need to be this big? Absolutely not. Look at how much space just this month slicer takes up. Frankly, it's a ridiculous amount of space. So yeah, this looks kind of fancy having the snipped corners on all of the slicer values, but that, slight cosmetic coolness that we have here just is not worth the amount of space that we're giving up. I say all the time on the channel, and especially in my Udemy classes, never forget that slicers and interactive elements, those are just nice to haves. Like, those are definitely ways to sort of engage your users and make them want to use your report. But the data has to be front and center. At the end of the day, this is a toy sales analysis report. We have to make sure that the analysis leaps off of the page. So, I would typically say that if your slicers are taking up 25% of your very precious real estate for analysis, that's way too much. I think that in a perfect world, all of your slicers should take up maybe 10% of your page. There's always a little bit of wiggle room. Honestly, in my after version that I'll show in a second, I probably go a little bit above that 10%. But it all depends on how many insights you're trying to present, and how much data you're really trying to cram into a single report page. If you feel like you have more slicers than you can fit into, let's say 10 to 15% of your real estate here, consider using something like the filter pane over here on the side. I feel like not enough people use the filter pane when your users just need to be able to see some slicers and make some very, sort of quick on-the-fly selections from the data. It's over there for you to use. So never hesitate to use the filter pane when you have more filters and slicers and can really be crammed, here where you should have your data. And of course, there are also instances where if you have just a huge number of slicers and you want to embed them in your report, you can also build something like a collapsible slicer panel using bookmarks. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I have a video from way back when on the Sweatpants BI channel where I show you how to set up an expandable and collapsible slicer panel using bookmarks. That might be enough to get you started. But I definitely picked this report in part because of the color choices, and also because these 4 slicers over here just take up way too much valuable room that could be used for telling more interesting things about the actual data. Another thing over here that I see newcomers to Power BI and data visualization do all the time is we have 5 cards over here demonstrating year-to-date revenue, year-to-date units sold, year-to-date profit, and year-to-date revenue growth and profit growth. Now, all 5 of these cards are presented in exactly the same way, but do you think that maybe a couple of these cards are more important than the others? Honestly, I think that all 5 cards probably are justified to display on a summary sales analysis page. So I don't have any problems with the actual cards themselves, but are there any cards on here that are more important than the others? In my opinion, if I were on a sales team, or if I were leading a sales organization for a company, I would want to know about this 7% dip in year-to-date revenue growth and this 17% dip in year-to-date profit growth. These are my headlines. So when I get to the after portion, one thing that I'm definitely going to try to do with my aesthetic choices is figure out a way to make these numbers just pop forward. I'm going to show these numbers, but I'm going to kind of let them sit in the background. These are the numbers that I want to just leap forward. And while we're on the subject of these cards, one other thing that I will point out about the author's design choices that are something that just kind of I think get under my skin is when you have cards that just come right up next to each other. Like notice that this card is bordering the very edge of the report page. These two cards are touching each other. This card is touching this slicer. So many of the borders touch each other, and I find that a little bit distracting. Again, I always like to have roughly the space of a number 2 pencil is kind of the way that I describe it. I don't even know if that's perfect. It's probably a little bit less than that, but I always like to have just a little bit of spacing, and I like to be consistent with that spacing on all sides of my data visuals, just to give those things a little bit more room to breathe. I guarantee that your report will look cleaner if you just have that extra bit of space between all of the objects on the page. The next thing that I want to talk about is something that I don't often get to talk about, and that is the fact that a map visual is not always 100% the best visual for showing geographic data. I know, doesn't make sense, right? I have cities in my data set. Why wouldn't I want to put those on a map? Well, let's talk about this map visual that the author created that has the top 5 cities by sales. What I'm asking you here is, first of all, without hovering, without doing anything, tell me what the number 1 city is for sales. You can probably see it right here, Mexico City. It does look like it's the largest bubble. Now, without doing anything else, tell me what the number 2 city is. Here is where I start to get a little bit confused. I think it could be this circle, which is Monterrey, or it could be this circle, which is Guadalajara. I'm having a really hard time figuring out which of these bubbles is larger. And don't even get me started on the next 2 smallest ones that are 4 and 5 respectively. If you're going to have a visual that says top 5 cities by sales, you shouldn't require your user to hover over every single one of these bubbles and sort of mentally rank them. That's why a bar chart would have been a much easier way of capturing this story than the map. Yes, it's nice having them actually plotted here, but it's not the most useful way of sort of explaining the specific story that you've laid out in your title, because I can't look at this visual and automatically know what the top 5 cities are by sales and what those figures are. I would have just made a bar chart here instead, even though that's probably a little bit counterintuitive. Another thing that I want to point out that I noticed in this report was kind of an inconsistent use of language. Because one thing that I notice here is that the word revenue is used, and then I have top 5 cities by sales, top 5 best-selling product, top 5 product by sales, weekly revenue distribution. Is there a meaningful difference in this data set between sales and revenue? Personally, I'm not exactly sure. So, if you are using one measure, make sure that you're using the same language across your report. Don't flip-flop back and forth between sales and revenue if they're the same thing. And in this report, sales and revenue, they're using the exact same measure. It's just sometimes that measure is being called sales, sometimes it's being called revenue. I would just say pick one. Or if there is a meaningful distinction, make sure that you're providing a note somewhere explaining the difference between what revenue and sales mean in the context of the report. Another thing that I noticed here that I thought was very confusing in this report is that we have a bar chart here that says top 5 best-selling product, and then we have another tree map over here that says top 5 product by sales. To me, that sounds identical. Like, to me, these titles are, even though they're not literally verbatim, they seem like they're saying the same thing. So I was confused as to why Lego Bricks is showing 2.39 million, but over here it's only showing about 60,000. Colorbuds 1.56 million, over here 104,000. And so when I hover on this, I can see that maybe it was just mislabeled, but this is actually visualizing units instead of sales. So over here it looks like we're talking about dollars, and over here it looks like we're talking about units. And finally, the last thing that I wanted to talk about were the time series visuals. which are just a little bit too small to read and have some other problems. First of all, our profit by month line chart here is just really, really difficult for me to read because all of the data labels are just super, super cluttered. And because we have a month title here on our x-axis, which you can barely even see, it pushes our x-axis values up even farther, which just causes our line to be even more sort of scrunched up. So, obviously someone who's looking at this, I feel pretty confident they're going to know that these are months. I wouldn't recommend even labeling the x-axis here, and that would give us a little bit more room to sort of expand that y-axis line. So here, let's go ahead and just demonstrate what I'm talking about here. Let's just go ahead and scrap the title entirely, and you can see now, that line is a little bit bigger and easier to read here, but we're going to continue to fix this in the after version. And now we've got our weekly revenue distribution, which is also a bit confusing here because it's sorted by weekly revenue. So it's not sorted in chronological order, which is not typically what I recommend. Because anytime that we have chronological or time series based categories like months and weekdays, our audience or our viewers are already going to be sort of programmed to expect to see Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And yes, this sort of provides the daily ranking, but in this specific situation, it's kind of a weird thing. If these were product categories, we would absolutely sort them based on revenue. But because they're weekdays, it's probably going to be easier for our users to interpret this if we sort everything Sunday through Saturday. So we're going to be fixing that when we get to the next page. One thing that I want to make sure of, though, is I just want to go over to my dates table. And okay, we've got day of week here, which is our Saturday, Friday, Thursday, but let's make sure too that this is sorting correctly. And so we do have a weekday or numeric column in our data set that indicates the number that goes with each day of the week. Let's go ahead and just make sure that we can sort this correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and just drop this on here to demonstrate what I mean. Let's go ahead and change the sum of weekday to, okay. So what we want to have happen is we want our day of week column to be sorted by our weekday column, which is numeric. So let's go ahead and just click on day of week, and let's go ahead and grab our sorting options up here, and let's program this to sort by weekday. Now we're going to go back over here to our visual, and let's go ahead and sort our axis based on day of the week. Let's go ahead and sort that in ascending order. And now we've got Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, which incidentally, I think also makes it even more clear that our revenue looks like it is largely clustered around Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So we've talked about just about everything that I think could stand to be improved by just giving this report a little bit more attention. Next, let's go ahead and hop over to our after page, and I'll walk you through all of the changes that I'm going to make here. The first thing is, once again, I am going to actually keep the purple background. I just made it a little bit darker, and the reason that I went darker with the purple that is being used in the original report is that I want my accent color to really, really pop off the screen. We'll talk more about that accent color in just a second, but the first thing that I want to do is I want to circle back to these slicers and how much space they take up. Now, I typically recommend that when you have slicers directly on your report page, that you either keep those running across the top or you keep them all together on the left. If you only have 3 or 4 slicers like we have here, usually you can get away with just putting all of those across the top next to your title. Because I do that a lot, and I think I've done that on several straight dashboard redemptions, I decided let's go ahead and keep our title and all of our slicers over here on the left. And the reason that I wanted to demonstrate that is I also wanted to show that just by making smart design choices and keeping everything evenly spaced out, I'm showing a lot more slicers than we had in the original report here. Just by making them all drop downs, I'm able to include more than twice the number of slicers, or it may be exactly twice the number of slicers it is, and my title in a much, much smaller space. And so now I've still got, around 70, I would say around 80-85% of the report page left to flesh out my data visuals. So we've got a nice good section, we've got a really nice tight area over here for all of our slicers. They're all neatly grouped, and everything else we're going to use for our data visuals. And the first data visuals that I want to focus on are my cards here. Like I said, I think these cards make pretty decent sense for including over here in our report. So for my KPI cards, all I did was I just organized those going across the top of the page. So we've got our year-to-date units sold, we've got our year-to-date revenue, we've got our year-to-date revenue change, our year-to-date profit, and our year-to-date profit change. And most of these cards are, pretty close to being the same size. I did make my year-to-date profit change a little bit larger just to add extra emphasis. And you'll also notice that because I thought that the year-to-date revenue change and profit change numbers were the most important on the page to sort of highlight, I gave those bright white backgrounds, and I'm using purple text. Basically, I just flipped the design choices that I made in my other cards so that these specific cards are going to jump out. Like if you take a step back from this report, you'll notice how quickly your attention goes to these cards instead of these cards, which use kind of a dark purple background, purple text, that kind of forces them to sort of blend in or push to the back a little bit. The next thing that I want to talk about is, okay, we've got a purple aesthetic going here. Right now we're just using purple and white for some of our text values. But for when we start getting into our data visuals like bar charts, line charts, maps, whatever you want to put in this, we're going to need a good color pop that is going to really contrast with this and really hook the user's attention on the most important insights. So let's pull up a color wheel here, or a whole bunch of color wheels that I just Googled super fast. And let's quickly figure out which color is going to complement the purple that we chose pretty well. So, here are our purples. And in order to find a really good contrasting color that's going to mesh well with that purple theme that we're doing, we're going to want to hop over here to the other side of the color wheel. And you can see, in the original report, yellow was used. Like I said, not the worst choice that someone could have made. That does at least align to the color wheel, but the complementary color that I'm going to use is going to be right over here. I'm going to use this kind of bright orange or kind of yellowish orange as my accent color. And, I'm going to continue using purple in the less important elements of like bar charts. But when I have something that I really want users to focus on, I'm going to use that kind of orange or yellowish orange color. So let's go ahead and pull up the bar charts that I made to sort of talk about our 5 best-selling products and our top 5 products by sales. I ended up kind of scrapping this visual, and I'm going to focus on creating, some really good bar charts that focus on the top 5 best-selling products. So let's go ahead and add our bar charts in. And you can see there's the color pop that I used, which is, of course, that yellowish orange that I picked from my color wheel. And reading from left to right, I just focused on the 5 best-selling products by revenue, which is Lego bricks, Magic Sand, Color Buds, Rubik's Cubes, and Nerf guns. And I chose to only focus on those 5 products for all 3 of these visuals here so that I can highlight that if we look at the 5 best-selling products but focus instead on year-to-date revenue change, we can see that Magic Sand is really surging year over year. Like sales are way up from what they were the current year, from what they were the previous year. But some of our other best sellers like Lego bricks are down 21%. Color Buds are down 61% from the previous year. Rubik's Cubes down 15%. And we're seeing the exact same numbers reflected for our year over year profit change. So, this is one way, I want to emphasize, this is just one way of showing people, hey, we might have something to worry about, because if we look at our best-selling products, many of those are also the same products that are down considerably year over year, or they're down considerably from what we saw in terms of revenue and profit in the prior year. And by using orange, this yellowish orange, I'm able to sort of help people see what I want them to see, starting with Lego bricks as the top seller. And then we can see Lego bricks is also down 21%. Color Buds are down 61%. So this is just one way that I chose to sort of take that bar chart concept from over here and just tease it out a little bit more. The next thing that we're going to focus on is our profit by month and weekly revenue distribution. So let's go ahead and pop over here. I'm going to go ahead and turn on my time series visuals. And you can see I've got my line chart here. And this time, instead of just showing profit by month, I chose instead to focus on the year over year. And let's go ahead and fix this real quickly. I think the title could be more clear. I'm going to call this year-to-date revenue change by month. And I also tried to keep the same data labels, but I also added markers so that it's a little bit easier to see each month. And I also am only showing the rounded up percentage. I'm not showing on the visual like, 0.7, 0.6, 0.6. For this type of visual, it's probably good enough to just show 38%, 36%, 41%. And just it's probably not very likely that the user is all that concerned with knowing that it was 37.7 and not 38. That kind of precision is probably not as interesting as just knowing the overall narrative here. That revenue was chugging along pretty nicely for the first quarter, still okay in the second quarter, and then towards the end of the third quarter we start to see a dip. And then by the time we get into Q4, we're noticing that things are just really, really dropping off and we're just falling like a stone. So, this is just a better way of sort of showing that year-to-date revenue change than just showing like profit or revenue by month. Because you don't get a lot of context out of just showing, the profit or the revenue. That year-over-year change tells us much more. And I also added a line on the y-axis to help us understand here is 0% revenue change. And of course, now we've dropped below that. And for weekly revenue distribution, because I've made smarter layout choices here, I had a lot more room to sort of expand this visual and make it more clear to show the $1.4 million in revenue on Fridays and the same for Saturdays. Finally, the last change that I chose to make to this was to take my map over here and just do a little bit more with it. Like I said, maps are always fun to look at. I love maps, but it's not the best way of showing revenue for the top 5 cities. So instead of showing maps, I went back to bar charts so that you can easily see that the cities generating the highest year-to-date revenue are Mexico City, Monterrey, Guadalajara, Hermosillo, and Guanajuato. And of course, I also chose over here, just like I did up here, where I focused on just the same 5 cities, I wanted to also show the year-to-date revenue change for those 5 cities so that we can say, okay, Mexico City, hey, it's our highest revenue generating city, but that's still 17.6% below what it was last year. So, so Mexico City is earning the most revenue, but still revenue is way down, and that's probably something we need to be concerned about. And just so I'm consistent for my data labels, instead of showing 2 data labels, let's go ahead and just simplify this visual even more by showing 0 decimal places, because really we just need to know, hey, sales are down 18% in Mexico City year-to-date, year-over-year, and in Guadalajara down 21%. So overall, I just wanted to emphasize that, hey, if you're just hell-bent on using a color background, no problem. It's always possible to sort of update your color choices so that you can use that. But, you still have to, understand proper color theory. And I recommend if you are using a color background, go darker with that color so that you can use like white and bright colors for sort of your color pops. If you're just using kind of, middle tone colors like the purple that we see over here, or like this blue or this yellow, what happens is that your report is going to look super washed out. So, for your overall theme, I recommend you either use kind of a lighter theme or a darker theme. And of course, in this situation, we're using a dark purple as our theme with bright yellowish orange colors and white as sort of our accent or color pops. But, just to sort of underscore that if you use really good spacing and alignment and shrink numbers when you can fit a ton of information onto a standard Power BI report page, just like I have here. There is a lot more content on this page than on this page, and yet this page feels like it has less going on, and it's much easier to sort of focus on the most important elements that are being represented here. So I think that we were able to redeem that dashboard, very easily just by making better use of the total report page real estate, moving some things around, making smarter layout decisions, and of course, really tweaking our colors and sort of streamlining our visuals to fit the specific narrative around sales and revenue analysis. So, I think that report had some potential. That's why I chose to, redeem it for this series on my YouTube channel. If there are some things about that report that I didn't talk about or that you wish I had fixed, by all means, feel free to sound off in the comments. Or if there were some things that I did in my fixed version that you really liked, that I didn't even comment on, feel free to call those out so that other people see what the things that could have been improved and the things that were fixed. As always, I love doing this dashboard redemption series. If you have a dashboard that you would be interested in me redeeming, by all means, feel free to send me over the PBIX file on LinkedIn. Or, direct me to the data source and I can try to, recreate it from there. I'm not going to ever post anyone's names on the Dashboard Redemption series. This series is just focused 100% on learning and growth and sort of, using someone's designs to help improve the overall community and their approach to data visualization and building really cool Power BI reports. So I'd never want to keep this focused on people. I just want to keep it focused on the sorts of, mistakes that I think can be easily improved. Mistakes that I see people making in their Power BI reports all the time that are not that hard to fix, but we're actually going to talk about, what are the specific things you need to do to fix them and become a better report developer. So if you enjoyed this video, as always, feel free to like or subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Very, very grateful to all of my followers on Sweatpants BI, and very, very eager to keep the Dashboard Redemption series going. Thanks again for checking out this video, and I will see you next time on Sweatpants BI. Thanks, everybody.